Hello, welcome to my channel. So today we're going to talk about the digestive system. So we look at the human anatomy and physiology lessons. Okay, so we are going to describe the general organization of the digestive system. Also describe some of the functions of the gastrointestinal tract, of course, the digestive. So we all know that every cell of the body needs nourishment, and yet most cells cannot leave their position in the body and travel to a food source. So the food must be converted to a usable form and delivered. Then the digestive system provides the body with water, electrolytes, and other nutrients. Okay, so in order to do this, the digestive system is specialized to digest food, propel it through the digestive tracts, and of course, it has to digest it and absorb the water, electrolytes, and other nutrients from the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so once these useful substances are absorbed, they are transported through the secretory system to cells where they are used. Then the undigested portion of the food is moved through the digestive tract and eliminated through the anus. Okay, so there are some regions of the digestive system that you are supposed to know. So the digestive system consists of the digestive tract, which is a tube extending from the mouth to the anus, and its associated accessory organs, primarily glands which secrete fluids into the digestive tract. Then the digestive tract is also called the alimentary canal or the alimentary tract. Okay, so the term gastrointestinal tract, or GIT for short, technically only refers to the stomach, the intestines, but it is also often used as a synonym for the digestive tract. Okay, so remember this point technically to say, if you use the word gastrointestinal tract, or GIT for short, technically it's made up of the gastro for the stomach and the intestines. So we talk about the stomach and the intestines, but it's actually even used as a synonym for the entire digestive tract. Okay, then the regions of the digestive tract include the mouth or the oral cavity, which has the salivary glands, and tonsils as the accessory organs. Then we have the pharynx or throat with tubular mucus glands. Then you have the esophagus with tubular mucus glands. You have the stomach, which contain main tube-like glands. Then you have the small intestines, which consist of the duodenum, jejunum, and the ileum, with the liver, gallbladder, and the pancreas as major accessory organs. Then the large intestine include the cecum, colon, and the rectum, and the anal canal with the mucus glands. Then, of course, lastly, you have the anus. Okay, so then you have the major food groups and their building blocks. So the major food groups, number one, we have carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, common sources include rice, bread, noodles, corn, and wheat. Then the building blocks of carbohydrates are just simple sugars such as glucose, fructose, and galactose. Then for proteins, the common sources for protein are meat, chicken, egg, tofu, soya, and milk. And their building blocks are, of course, amino acids. Then finally, we have the fats or lipids. We have butter, uh, margarine, lard, and their building blocks are fat acids and glycerol. Okay? And there are two forms of digestion. So number one form of digestion is physical or mechanical digestion, which includes processes like chewing or mastication in as it is termed. Okay, then of course there will be cutting and tearing of food to make food particles smaller in size, which makes digestion easier. Then you have chemical digestion, which involves the enzymes which chemically break down the food into simpler forms. And I usually like to ask a question like, discuss the chemical digestion of carbohydrates, or discuss the physical and both chemical digestion of carbohydrates. Okay, so these are some of the questions I usually like to ask, okay, in essay forms. Okay, so in terms of functions of the digestive tract, number one would be ingestion. So ingestion is the introduction of solid or liquid food into the stomach. Then the normal route of ingestion is through the oral cavity, but food can be introduced directly into the stomach by the nasogastric or the stomach tube, especially if you're in the hospital setup. You want to, if someone is not feeding, you can use the NGT to feed them directly into the stomach. Then the other function is mastication, which is the process by which food is taken into the mouth and is chewed by the teeth. So the food that is taken to the mouth is chewed by the teeth. That is the process called mastication, or chewing for short. Then the digestive enzymes cannot easily penetrate solid food particles and can only work effectively on the surfaces of the particles. Then we have deglutination or swallowing. So this now moves the food and liquid in a form which we call a bolus from the oral cavity into the esophagus. Then we have the next one, which is peristalsis, which is responsible for moving material from the material through most of the digestive tract, so meaning from the esophagus going down. Mostly are moved by peristalsis. Then mixing, some contractions don't propel food or chyme from one end of the digestive tract to the other, but rather mix the food back and forth within the digestive tract to mix the same fluids, the same foods. Then the other function is secretion. So as food moves through the digestive tract, secretions are added to lubricate, liquefy, and digest the food. Then digestion is the breakdown of large organic molecules into their component parts. So carbohydrates, of course, are going to be broken down into monosaccharides, proteins into amino acids, and triglycerides into fat acids and glycerols. So meaning they are broken down into their smaller units. Then absorption is the movement of molecules out of the digestive tract and into the secretion or into the lymphatic system. Then elimination is the process by which the waste products of digestion are removed from the body. That is elimination. Okay, so these are the things we are talking about in the digestive system. So we talked about ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and excretion or egestion. These are things you talked about. Okay, so the organ systems that are actually involved in digestion and then the digestive system with the mouth, the pharynx, esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine. We have the accessory digestive organs. We have the tongue, the gallbladder, the salivary glands, the liver, pancreas. These are some of the accessory digestive organs. Then in terms of histology of the GIT, it is made up of 4 layers. You have the mucosa, submucosa, the muscularis externa, the serosa or the adventitia. These are the 4 layers it is made up of. Okay, so specifically this is what we're talking about. So it's made up of the mucosa, which is near the food particles, and the one which is in contact with the contents. So the mucosa layer is one which is in contact with the contents that are passing through the canal into the lumen specifically. Then the mucosa is made up of the epithelium. Then apart from the mucosa, then the mucosa itself is of course made up of the epithelium, the lamina propria, the muscularis mucosa. Then we also have the submucosa now, which is below the mucosa. And the submucosa is of course made up of the submucosa as structures such as the muscularis externa, and apart from below the submucosa, so below the submucosa we have the muscularis externa. Then the muscularis externa is made up of two muscles. We have the longitudinal muscle and the secular muscle. Then below the muscularis externa, we have the serosa. Okay, so the serosa is made up of the epithelium and the connective tissue. Then this is in terms of storage, the layers of the GI tract. Okay, so this is what we were from talking about. So the mucosa, we have the epithelial membrane that lines. It is the epithelial membrane that lines the GI tract from the mouth all the way to the anus. It secretes mucus, digestive enzymes, and hormones. It also absorbs nutrients, protects from disease, and from the GI contents as well. Then remember, the mucus that is going to produce is one which actually also provides a protective barrier from the GI contents. Okay, then the mucosa has three layers. We have the epidermis, we have the lamina propria, which is a loose connective tissue which contains capillaries and some elements of mold. Okay, then you have muscularis mucosa as well. In the submucosa is moderately dense connective tissue with blood, nerves, lymph vessels, and lymphoid follicles rich in elastic fibers. Then the muscularis externa is a smooth muscle responsible for peristalsis and segmentation. And this one is a circular layer, and it is longitudinal layer, it has sphincters. In some areas, the circular layer thickens and acts as a valve. Okay, then let's now start with the organs in details, or the one of the organs. We're going to start with the cavity of the GIT. Okay, of the digestive tract, which of course the synonym is GIT. Okay, the oral cavity, which is the mouth, extends from the lips to the oropharyngeal isthmus, and the oropharyngeal isthmus is the junction of the mouth and the pharynx. Okay, and is coarse bounded above by the soft palate and the parotogrosso folds, and below it is bounded by the dorsum of the tongue, and it is subdivided into the vestibule and the oral cavity proper. Okay, so we have the vestibule. The vestibule is a slit-like space between the cheeks and the gums. That is the vestibule. Then it communicates with the exterior through the oral fissure. Then when the jaws are closed, it communicates with the oral cavity proper behind the third molar tooth and on each side. Superiorly and inferiorly limited by the deflection of the mucous membrane from the lips and cheeks into the gums. That is the vestibule. Okay, the stage-like space between the cheeks and the gums. Okay, so the lateral O of the vestibule is formed by the cheek, and the cheek is composed of the bassineter muscle, covered laterally by the skin and medially by the mucous membrane. Then a small papilla on the mucosa opposite the upper second molar tooth marks the opening of the duct of the parotid gland. Okay, then you have the what we call the oral cavity proper. So it is the cavity within the alveolar margins of the maxilla and the mandible. Its roof is formed by the hard palate anteriorly and the soft palate posteriorly. Okay, then its floor is formed by the mylohyoid muscle. The anterior two-third of the tongue lies on the floor. So the two-third, this is the tongue. Then the anterior two-third will lie on the actually lies on the floor. Okay, let's move. Then let's go to the floor of the mouth. So this one is covered with mucous membrane. Then in the midline, a mucous fold. We have the frenulum and which connects the tongue to the floor of the mouth. Then on each side of the frenulum, A small papilla as the opening of the duct of the submandibular gland. A rounded ridge extending backward and laterally from the papilla is produced by the sublingual gland. Okay, then we are done with the mouth. So now on the pharynx. So the pharynx is a masticulofacial half cylinder that links the oral and nasal cavities in the head to the larynx and esophagus in the neck. Then the pharyngeal cavity is a common pathway for air and food. Then the pharynx is attached above to the base of the skull and is continuous below and approximately at the level of the vertebra CVI. Then with the top of the esophagus, the walls of the pharynx are attached anteriorly to the margins of the nasal cavities, oral cavity, and the larynx. Okay. Then the pharynx is subdivided into three regions. We have the nasopharynx, which is the pharynx that is found in the uh, at the edge of the nasal cavity. Then you have the oropharynx at the edge of the oral cavity. Then you have that's below the oropharynx, you find the laryngopharynx. Then the posterior apertures, which are the corni of the nasal cavities, open into the nasal pharynx. Okay, then the posterior opening of the oral cavity opens into the oropharynx. Then the superior aperture of the larynx, which is the laryngeal inlet, opens into the laryngopharynx. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. So the space which I'm highlighting here, that is the nasopharynx. Then the one which is here, that is the oropharynx. The one which is here, that is the laryngopharynx. So that's actually how the folds are. Okay. So then anatomy of the pharynx compartment. So we talked of the nasopharynx. Okay. So of course these ones you have to see them from behind. Of course you don't necessarily see them. So the nasopharynx is, if this is from the nose. Okay. If you are to do a cross section and if you are viewing it from the nose. So if you look at the back of the nose, then you're going to find the nasopharynx. Then if this is from the mouth, then a close section, this is the uvula here, and the back is, that is the oral pharynx. Okay. Then the other one, that's in below the oropharynx. Okay, on the inlet of the larynx, we are going to find the laryngopharynx. Okay, that's what we are talking about. Okay, when we are done with the pharynx, let's go to the esophagus. So the esophagus is a muscular 25 centimeters tube from the laryngopharynx to the stomach, and it passes through the diaphragm at the esophageal hiatus. Then you have the gastroesophageal sphincter, which is also known as the cardiac sphincter. And I also like to ask this in one of the one-word answers, where I say the lower esophageal sphincter, LES for short, is also known as the answer, of course, is the cardiac sphincter or the gastroesophageal sphincter. Okay, if the cardiac sphincter or the lower esophageal sphincter or the gastroesophageal sphincter is a physiological sphincter that helps esophagus closed when empty. Okay, then the wall has all four GI tract tunics, so meaning the layers of the esophagus has all the four GI tract tunics. It has the epithelial layer, which changes at the junction with the mouth from the stratified squamous epithelium to simple columnar epithelium. And of course, that's where also esophageal mucus glands lubricate food bolus. Then it has the muscularis externa, where the superior one third of the muscularis externa is skeletal muscle, and the mid one third is mixed skeletal and smooth. Then the lower one third is typically smooth. Then finally we have the adventitia, which makes up the external covering. Okay, then let's go to the stomach. So the stomach is a muscular J-shaped organ forming the widest and most distensible part of the alimentary canal. Then this lies between the esophagus and the duodenum, and it is situated in the upper abdomen and lies in the left hypochondriac, epigastric, and umbilical regions and beneath the left costal margins. So hope you have not forgotten all the 9 regions of. So functions of the stomach: it acts as the reservoir of food, digestion of food, controls the release of digestive contents into the duodenum. Okay, so that's the stomach here. Okay, so you have the cardiac, cardiac sphincter. Then the stomach has parts. You have the fundus of the stomach, the body of the stomach. Okay, you have the pyloric antrum, the angular notch. Okay, then you have the pyloric part of the stomach and the sphincter, which now at the end of the stomach, that is the pyloric sphincter. That is okay. So in short, the parts of the stomach we're talking about of the fundus, which projects upward above the level of the cardiac notch and is distended with gas. Then we have the body, we have the fundus and the body. So the body is the largest portion that extends from the fundus to the notch angular incisura, and you have the pyloric antrum, which extends from the incisura to the proximal limit of the pylorus. Then the pylorus is tubular and its thick muscular wall forms the pyloric sphincter, and this cavity is called the pyloric canal. Okay, then the stomach has two orifices, and it also has two borders or two curvatures, and it has two surfaces. The orifices, we have the cardiac orifice, which lies between the left seventh costal cartilage and is 2.5 centimeters from the junction with the sternum. Then we have the pyloric orifice, which opens into the duodenum. Then the curvatures, it has the lesser curvature, which forms the right border of the stomach, and it provides attachment to the lesser curvature. Then we have the greater curvature, which forms the left border and provides attachment to the greater omentum. We have the gastrosplenic ligament and the gastrosplenic ligament. Okay, we get down with the two curvatures. Then the two surfaces, we have the anterior and the posterior surfaces. That's about it. So this is what we are talking about. You have the cardia here, you have the fundus, which is mainly filled with air, or gas to be specific. You have the body, you have the pylorus, and the pylorus has a space or the cavity which is known as the pyloric canal. Then the sphincter is the pyloric sphincter. Then you have two curvatures, we have the lesser curvature and the greater curvature. Okay, that's what we are talking about. Okay. So again, this is what we are talking about. So we can move. Then let's go to the small bowels. So the small bowels are the longest part of the gastrointestinal tract and extend from the pyloric orifice of the stomach to the ileocecal junction. And it's a oral tube, and it's approximately 5 meters or a range of 3 to 7 meters, and is long with a narrowing diameter from the beginning to the end. And it consists of the duodenum, jejunum, and the ileum, and is the location of the complete digestion and absorption of the most of the products of digestion and water, electrolytes and minerals such as calcium and iron. Then the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine, and it is a C-shaped structure adjacent to the head of the pancreas. It is 20 to 25 centimeters long and is above the level of the umbilicus, and its lumen is the widest of the small intestine. It is retroperitoneal except for its beginning, which is connected to the liver by the hepatoduodenal ligament. So the duodenum is both retroperitoneal and intraperitoneal. Okay. Then the duodenum is divided into four parts. We have the superior part, which is the first part, which extends from the pyloric orifice of the stomach to the neck of the gallbladder, and is just to the right of the body of the vertebra, and passes anteriorly to the bile ducts. Then they have the gastroduodenal artery, the portal vein, and the inferior vena cava. Then clinically, the beginning of this part of the duodenum is referred to as the ampulla or the duodenal cup, and it is the most duodenal, and that's where most duodenal ulcers occur, in this part of the duodenum. So meaning here in the ampulla or the duodenal cup, that's the beginning part of, that's the first part where the duodenum begins from, and that's where also most duodenal ulcers occurs from. Okay, then we have the second part, which is the descending part. So of the duodenum is just to the right. So the now second part of the duodenum is just to the right of midline and extends from the neck of the gallbladder to the lower body of the vertebra column of the vertebra lumbar 3. So vertebra lumbar 3. Then it's anteriorly crossed by the transverse colon, and posterior to it is the right kidney, and medial to it is the head of the pancreas. Okay. Then this part of the duodenum contains major duodenal papillae, which is the common entrance for the bile and pancreatic ducts, and the minor duodenal papillae. Then this, which is the entrance for the accessory pancreatic ducts, and the junction of the foregut and the midgut just below the major duodenal papilla. Okay. Then that's what we are talking about here. So we are talking about the first part of the duodenum, second part of the duodenum. So we are done with the first part and the second part. Okay, so these are the structures. So the duodenum is here. Okay, this is the duodenum, and the superior part, the descending part, the inferior part. Okay, is what we are talking about. Let's continue with the duodenum. So we have the other parts of the duodenum. We have the inferior part, which is the third part, which is the longest section crossing the inferior vena cava, the aorta, and the vertebral column, and it is crossed anteriorly by the superior mesenteric artery and the vein, and the ascending part, which is the fourth part, passes upward on to the left of the aorta to approximately the upper border of the vertebra lumbar 2. Okay, and it terminates at the duodenojejunal fracture, or the duodenojejunal junction, as I like to call it, and it is fixed in position by the suspensory ligament of Treitz. And this same part where the suspensory ligament of Treitz is, where the duodenojejunal fracture is, that's where also the upper part of the GI ends. So meaning, if we are to separate the GI into the upper GI and the lower GI, the upper GI ends on the duodenojejunal fracture. So meaning below the duodenojejunal junction starts the lower GI. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. So below this same ligament, or the below the duodenojejunal junction or the duodenojejunal fracture, starts the lower GI. The other, if after you're done with it, after you're done with the duodenum, you also have to understand from the duodenum, you have the jejunum, then you have the ileum. Then from the ileum, you are going to have what we call the ileocecal junction. The ileocecal junction is one which joins, which is the junction between the large and the small intestines. So from the ileocecal junction, then you have the large intestines, and the appendix is just an appendage, so to speak, to the cecum, of course. So that's about the small intestines. So and let's proceed. Okay, so The large intestine extends from the ileocecal junction to the anus. Approximately, the large intestines are 1.5 meters in length, and they are divided into 4 segments. Of the cecum, which is the brown pouch, of the colon, then the colon is made up of 3 parts, of the ascending colon, the transverse colon, descending colon. Then from the colons of the other type of colon, which of course was not mentioned, of the sigmoid colon, then of the rectum, and finally then the functions of the large intestines. Number 1, lubrication of feces by mucus, absorption of water, salts, and other solutes. We have bacteria flora and colon synthesis. We have bacteria flora of colon that synthesizes vitamin B. Then you have the mucoid secretion of colon that is rich in antibodies of IgA group, which protect it from invasion by microorganisms. Then the microvilli of some columnar cells serve a sensory function. So even for small intestines, we find that in terms of structure of the small intestine, inside it they have what we call a villi. So the villi are the ones which are responsible even for absorption of who? The one which are responsible for playing the role of who? Absorption. So we have the microvilli, okay, on the surfaces of the folds in the intestines. Okay, then this is the large intestine. So we are talking about the large intestine as the ascending colon, the descending colon, the transverse colon. From the transverse colon, from the descending colon, you are going to find the sigmoid colon, you are going to find the rectum, the anal canal, then the anus. Okay, then this appendix is here. Then this is where we have the ileocecal junction and the ileocecal valve. So this is the large intestine we are talking about. Okay, so let's make it. So some special features of the large intestine of the tinea coli, of the thickening of the longitudinal muscularis, we have ostra, we have puckering created by the tinea coli, we have the epiploic appendages, we have fat-filled pouches of the visceral peritoneum. Then in terms of the storage of the large intestine, we have the villi which are present, and they contain numerous goblet cells, intestinal crepes, and simple tubular glands, lined with a simple columnar epithelium tissue, and the epithelium changes at the anal canal, and in short it becomes stratified squamous epithelium. This is what we are talking about. Okay, so this is the large intestine from men. Then the cecum is a large blind sac forming the commencement of the large intestine. It is about 6 centimeters and 7 centimeters broad, located in the right iliac fossa. It communicates superiorly with the ascending colon, medially at the level of the cecocolic junction with the ileum, and posterolateral medially with the appendix. So this is the cecum, then below it is the appendix. Okay. Then you have vessels and the nerves. So the cecal branches of the ileochoric artery. You have the veins that drain into the sphenomesenteric artery. Then you have the nerves that supply the nerve supply is from the T1 to L1, and you have the parasympathetic and the vagus. In terms of blood supply, you find that from the jejunum all the way up to the 2/3 to the medial 2/3 of the ascending of the transverse colon. So if you are to divide the transverse colon into 3 parts, you can they are all supplied by the sphenomesenteric artery. Then from the distal 1/3, so meaning if the transverse colon is divided into 2/3, the last third, which was the last 1/3, the distal 1/3, that's where the inferior mesenteric artery begins its supply from. Okay, hope you have gotten that point. If not, you can just comment in this comment section. Okay, so that is the cecum, and the cecum in terms of blood supply, you find that the blood supply that comes from the ileochoric artery. The ileochoric artery is a branch of the sphenomesenteric artery. Then the spiromesenteric artery, you make its terminal part of the, you make the ileochoric artery. The ileochoric artery, you make a terminal part of the ileochoric artery, and it will also even make an end artery, which is the appendicular artery. Then even supplies the appendix. Then the appendix is a worm-like diverticulum, which is about 6 to 10 centimeters in length, and arises from the posterior medial wall of the cecum, inferior to the ileocecal junction. Then the appendix has short mesentery, which is the mesoappendix, and the position of the appendix varies. So, 75% the appendix is, the location of the appendix is on the retrocecal. Then we have the pre-ileal, the posterior, and the pelvic. So the most common position of the appendix is the retrocecal, followed by the pelvic. So in short, the position of the appendix actually differs from person to person. Okay. In terms of function of the appendix, of course, the appendix is thought to not have any significant function in the human body. So this is what we are talking about in terms of position of the appendix. It can be found on the pelvic, can be found on the pre-ileal, can be found on the post-ileal, subcecal, retrocecal, and we are saying retrocecal is the most common position of the appendix. Okay. Then some applied anatomy is, of course, where we have acute appendicitis, which is the most common acute surgical emergence of the abdomen. So acute abdomen specifically. Okay, then let's move on to the rectum. So rectum, this is how the rectum is. So we have the from the rectum, above, below the rectum, we have the folds. Inside the rectum, we have the superior transverse folds, or the middle transverse folds. So those are some of the folds, and you have the inferior transverse folds of the rectum. That's what we are talking about. In terms of the directions of the rectum, in males we find that anteriorly there is a rectovesical pouch containing coils of the ileum and the colon. You have the base of the urinary bladder, the ampulla of vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostatic gland, the terminal part of the ureter. Okay, then in females, you have the rectouterine pouch, coils of the ileum and the sigmoid colon, the posterior wall of the vagina. Okay, then for the posterior, they are all just the same. There is no difference. As well as laterally, there is also no difference in terms of directions of the rectum in males and the. Okay, then in terms of blood supply, it's the same. So in terms of venous drainage, so for let's start with blood supply, I've supplied from by the superior rectal artery, of the middle rectal artery, and the inferior rectal artery. Venous drainage of the superior rectal vein, middle rectal vein, and inferior rectal vein. So in short, the artery and the venous drainage, they have similar names. So superior rectal artery, middle rectal artery, inferior rectal artery. The names correspond with the veins. So just change where we're writing artery, put veins. Okay. So we have already gone through the arteries of the rectum and the arteries of the arteries and the veins as well. So superior rectal, middle rectal, and inferior rectal. So we can just say middle rectal artery, vein, middle rectal vein, superior rectal vein, superior rectal artery. That's what we are talking about. Okay. With the veins. Then let's go to the anal canal. So the anal canal is 4 centimeters from the anorectal ring to the airy skin of the anal veg. Its lining as well as its musculature as important features that, together with the pelvic floor structures, contribute significantly to the regular defecation and the continence. Then its borders include the coccyx posteriorly. Then they have the ischio rectal fossa and its content bilaterally, and the perineal body and the vagina in women, and they have the urethra in men and in men anteriorly. Okay. Then in terms of the anal canal lining of the dentate to the pectinate line, which is made up of the anal valves, Then the proximal mucosa is corrugated into a series of 12 to 14 columns of Morganians with corresponding crypts between each folds. Then opening into these crypts are a variable number of anal glands which traverse the submucosa to enter the internal sphincter to terminate the intersphincteric plane. Okay, then the mucosa of the upper anal canal, like that of the rectum, is pinkish and is lined by the columnar epithelium, whereas the mucosa of the distal dentate line is paler and lined by the squamous epithelium devoid of air and transitional zone. And the transitional zone, which lies immediately proximal to the dentate line, which is pinkish in color at the verge, and you have the lining, which acquires the characteristics of normal skin with its apocrine glands, and this is where the infectious complications of the apocrine glands. Then we have the hidradenitis suppurativa. That's where they are also going to present from. So this is the rectum mucosa we're talking about. This is the dentate line, and these are the columns of Morgania. Okay, then below it we have the squamous mucosa. Okay, this the anal canal musculature. Then so we have below the anal musculature, in between, in the same anal musculature, we have what we call the anorectal ring. The anorectal ring marks the junction between the rectum and the anal canal. It is formed by the joining of the puborectalis muscle, the deep external sphincter, the conjoined longitudinal muscle, and the highest part of the internal sphincter. The anorectal ring can be clearly felt digitally, especially on its posterior and lateral aspects. Then there are some accessory glands in which the digestive tract, as so in short we are done with all the parts of the digestive tract. Now there will be another lecture to introduce the accessory organs, but I just wanted to mention them. Okay, so we have what we call accessory glands of the digestive tract. So we have the salivary gland, the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. So these are accessory organs. So these accessory parts secrete digestive enzymes or juices necessary for chemical digestion. And digestion process begins in the mouth, and it is the site for ingesting food. Food enters the body through the mouth with teeth, tongue, and salivary glands. And the sharp-edged teeth help to tear and rip and cut the food, while the flat surface premolars grind and chew the food into smaller sizes that increase the surface area. Then there are three pairs of salivary glands in the mouth: the parotid, sublingual, and the submandibular. Okay, and all these we are going to actually cover them in the next lesson, so there's no to actually go in details. Okay, so but you have to know that after the food has been swallowed, the bolus passes through the pharynx down the esophagus, which is the tube leading to the stomach. Then you have the peristaltic muscular contraction, in which the pharynx propels the bolus into the esophagus. Then the esophagus is also coated with slippery mucus, making the bolus pass easily along the tube. Remember the mucus, we are saying the saliva is made up of mucus, water, and the salivary amylase. Then from the esophagus, the food moves into the stomach. The stomach is the J-shaped muscular organ which stores food, and it has a capacity of about 1 to 2 liters in adults. It is made up of 3 layers of muscula, which are very important in creating grinding motion. Then both mechanical and chemical digestion can occur in the stomach. Then the churning or contraction of the stomach is mechanical. Then the gastric juices secretion is chemical digestion. Then you have the epithelial lining of the stomach, which secretes fundamental substances which aid in the digestion process. Then inside the same stomach, you have types of cells which secrete uh, substances. Number one, cell of the mucus cells, which secrete alkaline mucus that protects the lining of the stomach against acid. Then you have the palatal cells, which secrete hydrochloric acid, which that destroy ingested bacteria or microorganisms. Then you have the chief cells, which secrete protein digesting enzymes, pepsin and renin. Okay, that's the chief cells. Then you have the G cells, okay, which secrete hormones gastrin. So G for gastrin, remember, G cells for gastrin. And a protein that controls acid secretion. Okay, and if I usually like to ask about the hormone which inhibits gastrin, that is somatostatin. Okay, so that is very important to know the physiology. Okay, so these substances are called gastric juices, a combination of hydrochloric acid, mucus, hormones, and enzymes. That is an example of a gastric juice. Specifically, gastric is inside the stomach. So the gastric juice, we're talking about hydrochloric acid, mucus, hormones, and of course enzymes that have been produced. Okay, then the small intestine is the longest part of the alimentary canal, which is about 23 feet long, and is divided into three segments, which we have discussed. Okay, then the food chyme is pushed along by the peristalsis, and the food will undergo complete digestion in the small intestine. Then in the small intestine, the intestinal glands secrete enzymes for complete digestion of carbohydrates. Then the mixture of enzymes in the intestine is called the intestinal juice. Okay, then it is also the site of absorption, where nutrients are absorbed into the blood vessels of the secretory system. Then the lining of the stomach have a finger-like projection called the villi, which contain blood vessels that absorb nutrients. So this is an example of a villi. So the villi is an epithelial cell. You have the capillary network, you have the lacteal, and you have the epithelial cells. You have then below the lacteal, then you have the arterioles and the venules. Then you have the lymph vessels. This is this is the villi. The villi of absorption. Okay, and actually there are a lot of villi inside the small intestines. Then after absorption of nutrients, it becomes mostly undigested food and water, and it passes through the large intestine. Then the large intestine is divided into three regions: the cecum, colon, and the rectum. Then the three regions of the large intestine, which we have already discussed, we have the cecum, the colon, and the rectum. And of course, we have in terms of enzymes, we have digestive enzymes that are proteins that serve as biological catalysts which speed up the chemical reactions. So enzymes are specific. Their action is described by the lock and key hypothesis, which means that each enzyme has an active site with a specific shape, which will fit only at a specific substrate. So meaning no enzyme is multifactorial, it only has a specific substrate. Then the rows of the villi, the inner surface of the small intestine is covered by microscopic finger-like projection called villi or villus in singular. The villi of the small intestine are responsible for distributing the nutrients that has been processed through the digestive system into the secretory and lymphatic systems for delivery to all cells of our body. Okay, and there are some health practices promoting wellness of the digestive system. So a human being actually needs nutrients to be healthy. So in the six nutrients classes of essential nutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, vitamins, minerals, and of course as well as oil. Okay, so carbohydrates are the main source of energy. Proteins is for growth, repair, and replacement of cells and tissue. Fats provide much energy than carbohydrates, but they are needed only in small amounts. Vitamins and minerals contain no energy, but they may help maintain a healthy body, specifically for growth and repair. Water carries nutrients away throughout the body in the bloodstream. Then that's actually the end of the lecture. Thank you for watching. And the other thing which I just forgot to mention was the physiology of defecation. But I think uh, I will give the physiology of defecation in one of the revisions which are going to come after the anatomy and physiology lectures before we start the reproductive system. So I will give the physiology of digestion, physiology of defecation. I don't know why I'm saying physiology of micturition. Okay, so thank you for watching. Please subscribe and hit the bell notification. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you once again.